All right, our lesson today is to be able to use the percent proportion to solve proportion problems. And the percent proportion essentially goes this way. We have a part-to-whole relationship where the numerator of the first ratio represents the part, the denominator of the first ratio represents the whole amount. The numerator of the second ratio represents the part out of 100. The 100 represents the whole amount in the second ratio. It essentially looks like this. Part divided by whole is equal to the percent divided by 100. All right, and we remember that a proportion is simply two equivalent ratios. So we have our first part to whole ratio relationship is equal to the percent part to whole relationship. So let's take a look at some examples. Now the first example we're going to take a look at here says what percent of 15 is 12. So we're looking for a percent here. When we're looking for the percent, we're going to need a ratio out of 100. But that first ratio that we're going to write is the part to whole relationship. That part to whole relationship, almost always the smaller number is going to be in the numerator, almost always. And when we're given what I like to call the percent question, which is in this form here, the whole amount, or the denominator of that first ratio, follows, or usually follows, the word of. The numerator of that first ratio usually follows the word is. Right? Some teachers like to say is over of. I like to think of the part divided by the whole. So our first part to whole relationship is 12 to 15. And because we're looking for the percent, the numerator of our percent ratio is going to be our variable n, and the denominator, of course, because we're looking for a percent, is going to be 100. So our first part to whole relationship is 12 over 15 is equal to some amount over 100. Once we have our proportion written, we cross multiply. We use that cross product property, which says that 12 times 100 is 1200, and then 15 times n is 15n. And the cross products property says that the cross products of equivalent ratios are equal. And then we take this one step equation and we divide both sides by 15. Divide by 15. On the right they cancel, and 1200 divided by 15, that's going to be equal to 80. Alright, so 80 is going to be equal to n. So what we're saying here is that 12 out of 15 is the same as 80 out of 100. Alright, so that's our first example of using the percent ratio. Alright, our percent ratio says the part divided by the whole is equal to the percent over 100. Let's take a look at our second example. Here, the value following the word of in our percent question is the 50. So that's the denominator of our first ratio. We're given a percent here, 36, and the percent is the numerator of our percent ratio, right? Because the word percent means out of 100. So our percent is always going to be written as the percent over 100. We're looking for the part of our first ratio. What number is 36% of 100? So how many out of 50 is the same as 36 out of 100? Once we have our proportion set up, we use our cross products property. 100 times n is going to be 100n, and then we multiply 36 times 50. We multiply 36 times 50, that's going to be 1800. We divide both sides by 100. We divide by 100, they cancel, n is going to be equal to, right, n is going to be equal to 18. So we're saying 18 out of 50 is the same as 36 out of 100. Alright, let's take a look at our next example. Notice in our percent question, right? What follows the word of is missing, right? We're looking for what number. Well, when we have our percent question written that way, our first ratio, we're missing the denominator. We're looking for the whole amount. The part of our first ratio almost always follows the word is. That's going to be our numerator, 24. The second ratio, 150 over 100. Alright? So we use our cross product property and we multiply 150 times n is 150n. 24 times 100 is going to be 2400. We divide both sides by 150. Alright? They cancel. Alright? We use our cross product property there. And when we divide 2400 divided by 150, we wind up with 16. So n is going to be equal to 16. So we're saying 24 over 16 is the same as 150 out of 100, or 150%. Alright, now, just to review quickly, very simple, we're writing a percent proportion, so we're trying to make two equivalent ratios. One ratio is your percent ratio, so that's always going to be over 100. And if we're given the percent, that value is going to be the value over 100. So that's a very easy ratio to write. If we're asked to find the percent, then we're going to have the numerator of that ratio as our variable. It's the second ratio, or that other ratio, that's a little tricky, but essentially it is the part divided by the whole. Alright? And the part in the percent question will follow the word is, the whole amount, the denominator of that first ratio will follow the word of in the percent question. Alright? Okay, here's an example. It says the bar graph shows the strengths of tornadoes that occurred in Alabama in 2011. What percent of the tornadoes were EF1s? Well, the total, when we look at the table here, the total number of tornadoes is going to be 36 plus the 58 plus the 29 plus the 13 plus the 7 plus the 2. Right, so that's going to be 145 tornadoes, and that's going to represent the whole amount. The number of EF1s is 15, or 58, I'm sorry. So that's going to represent the part. We're looking for the percent. So we write our ratio. It's going to look like the following, right? Because we're looking for the percent, we're going to have n over 100. The second ratio, that is our part to whole relationship, 58 is our part, 145 is our whole. Once we have our proportion set up, we use our cross products property. 145 times n is 145n. 100 times 58 is 5800. Alright, and we're going to use our cross products property. 5800 divided by 145, and that's going to be equal to, well, let's try that again. 5800 divided by 145, yeah, that's going to be 40. So n is going to be equal to 40. Right? So 40% of the tornadoes were the EF1s. Alright, next example. We're going to be given these percent questions, and we want to be able to write the percent ratios from the percent questions. Okay, so let's do a few of these examples. Our first example, we're given here, what percent of 25 is 20? Because I see the phrase what percent, it means we're looking for what the percent. So I know I'm going to have n over 100 because I'm looking for the amount out of 100 that is equal to what? What percent of 25, right? So that's our denominator, is 20. Remember, in our percent question, whatever follows the word of, that's going to be the denominator of our ratio, or the whole, which represents the whole amount. The numerator of our ratio will follow the word is in our percent question. So the percent ratio is equal to the part divided by the whole. Once we have it written, we use our cross products property. 25 times n is 25n. 20 times 100, that's going to be 2,000. And when we divide 2,000 by 25, we wind up with 80. Right, divide both sides, n is equal to 80. So we're saying what percent of 25 is 20? 20 over 25 is the same as 80 out of 100, or 80%. All right, let's look at our next example. All right, once again, we're looking for the percent because I see the phrase what percent. So we're going to have n over 100 as one of our ratios. Doesn't matter whether the n over the 100 is on the left side of the ratio or the right, or the right ratio, right side of the equation. It doesn't matter. Now it's that next ratio we have to be careful of, right? It's the part divided by the whole. Well, whatever follows the word of, that's going to be your denominator. All right, and then we have the 1275. That's going to be our numerator. We use our cross products property. So we're going to have 50 times n is 50n. $12.75 times 100 is going to be 1275. Right, so we have to divide the 1275, and I have to divide that by 50, and we wind up with n is going to be equal to 25.5%, right, because we have to divide both sides of that equation by 50. All right, so we get n is going to be equal to 25.5 or 25.5%. All right, let's look at two more examples. What number is 5% of 60? Well, we're given the percent in this problem, so the percent always goes over 100. So that 5 is going to go over 100. For my second ratio, the word of, 60 follows that word of, so that's going to be my whole amount. That's going to be the denominator of my ratio. So we're looking for the numerator of the ratio. Cross products property. 100 times n is 100n. 5 times 60 is going to be 300. We divide both sides by 100. They cancel, and it's going to be equal to 3. So we're saying 3 out of 60 is the same as 5 out of 100. Right? Next example. 12% of 85 is what number? Well, I see 12%, so that has to be the numerator of my percent ratio. What follows the word of is the denominator of my second ratio. So once again, I'm looking for the part, right? That numerator of that other ratio, which is the part. It's a whole relationship. We're looking for the part. I use my cross products property. So I multiply 100 times n is 100n. And then we have to multiply the 12 times the 85. That's going to give me 1020. We divide both sides of that equation by 100, divide by 100, they cancel, n is going to be equal to, when we divide by 100, that's going to be 10.2. Alright, so we're saying 12 out of 100 is the same as 10.2 out of 85. Okay, let's try a couple more. 40% of what number is 26? Well, I'm given 40%, so that's got to be the numerator of my percent ratio. Now, what follows the word of, right, that's my variable. What follows the word is, that's my numerator of the ratio. So 26 is my numerator. We're looking for the denominator, so we're looking for the whole amount here. So 26 represents the part. 40 out of 100 is equal to 26 out of some number. Use my cross products property. 40 times n is 40n. 26 times 100 is 2600. We solve that one-step equation. We divide both sides of that equation by 40. So 2600 divided by 40, and we wind up with n is equal to 65. So we're saying 40 out of 100 is the same as 26 out of 65. 26 being the part, 65 being the whole amount. Alright, try a couple more. 84 is 75% of what number? I'm given 75%, so that's got to be the numerator of my percent ratio. The phrase what number follows the word of, so we're looking for the whole amount. We're given the part. 75 over 100 is equal to 84 out of some amount. I use my cross products property. 75 times n is 75n. 84 times 100 is going to be 8400. We divide both sides of that equation by 75. N is going to be equal to, right, let's see, 8400 divided by 75. That's going to be 112. Alright, so that's essentially it. Right? We could do a bunch of other examples, but the examples would all be the same. Right? If we're looking for the percent in our first couple of examples, the numerator of our percent ratio is going to be represented by the variable, and then the part to whole ratio, whatever follows the word of, that's going to be the denominator. Whatever follows the word is, that's going to be my numerator. We use that cross products property, and then we divide. Second type of problem we're doing, we're looking for the part, right? So the numerator, right? The numerator of that second ratio is missing. We're looking for the part. We're given the percent, 5%, so that's the numerator of my percent ratio, but because we're looking for the part, the numerator of my other ratio, my part to whole ratio, that's going to be represented by the variable. Whatever follows the word of, that's going to be the denominator of my other ratio. We use that cross products property, and then we divide, and then we find the part of 60, that is 5%. And then the last type of example we do is where we're looking for the whole amount. And that whole amount is going to be the denominator of my part to whole ratio. 40 out of 100, right? We're given 40%, so we put that percent ratio over 100. 40 out of 100 is equal to 26 over some amount, right? Because 26 follows the word is, that's the numerator. What follows the word of? Well, the phrase what number, that's our variable. That's going to be the denominator of my other ratio. So when we use the cross products property, we divide, and we wind up with n is equal to 65. Alright, I hope that's been helpful, and we'll see you soon.